Welcome to RiskIQ Radio.
Welcome in. I'm so lucky today to have a couple of people from RiskIQ, but I'm only going to call on one of them who's agreed to participate on a sunny Friday afternoon, not quite afternoon, so we're still in morning. I guess RiskIQ operates 7 by 24, so it might be afternoon for you, Jason, and I won't even ask you to reply to that. I don't know what time zone you're in these days, but I'm going to have Jason Zan on next, hopefully. So Jason is going to listen in next, as in probably next Friday, but hey, if he's willing to stay, maybe we'll do a 2-for-1 today. So Clarence, welcome in. You've been the general counsel and senior VP in charge of everything at RiskIQ for a long time. I mean, a long time in my book, because people have been with RiskIQ for, I guess it's going on my 15th year, 1-5, I think. You might say, no, it's more like 16. And I'll stand corrected if you want to tell me I need to be corrected, because my recollection in the back of my mind is it's about 15 years since the pure startup. But tell us your journey of how you got to RiskIQ, which I think is a great success story.
Sure. So there's so many ways there's so many points at which I can pick as the beginning, but I will pick 2013 as a way to start the story. So I joined RiskIQ. My first day was November 2nd, 2014. So what happened in 2013 was I had been a corporate attorney at a couple of law firms, a couple of big law firms, Skadden Arps to begin with, then Latham and Watkins for a number of years, and then finally Weil Gotshal. Up until 2013, I was in their Hong Kong office doing cross-border M&A, private equity work. And then I moved back home to the Bay Area, San Francisco. This is my hometown, and started looking for an in-house job. But in certain respects, I've been looking for an in-house job since I graduated law school.
So you're one of the few people out there that goes to law school and says, "Look, I'm not going to deal with clients if I can avoid it. I want to have just a corporate job, one client, in theory, one client." Maybe you will tell us you actually have multiple clients in that context. We'll talk about that. But you are like dead on in law school. I will eventually go in-house because I would enjoy really helping a company grow.
That is exactly right. And that's one of the things I found, working at a large law firm. I think and you would know this, Jack, like, as the more senior you get, the more pressure, rightly so, there is to specialize, right? Because you have to find your home in the firm, right?
Right. And particularly at big firms like that, those are all great firms that you were with, and they typically have departments. And unlike my journey or my start at what was then a small firm, we started Apple Computer. You guys have heard all that story. Small, tiny firm. We had one leg in litigation, one leg in corporate, one leg in business planning, one leg in financing. And all those legs came together because they had the old New York style of, we're going to do everything so long as the client is decent and is loyal, and we'll be loyal to them. But they soon realized Wilson Sonsini upstairs was specializing, and all the other firms are specializing. So as they grew, they became more specialized. And when you're at a big firm like the ones you mentioned, it does become pretty much a specialization game, right?
That is exactly right. And that's how you make partner there. You find a specialization that the firm needs, you get more and more specialized, right? And you become their, whereas when you start off as an associate, I'm going to do corporate work, right? By the time you get to a mid-level, you're saying, I can do M&A work. By the time you get ready to be a partner, I'm going to do mid-market M&A for tech companies on the buy side.
Right. Right. It's
that's my thing.
It's that branch and sub-branch of the tree, and you're not going to flip over to another branch. Even if you're not even busy, they'll say, just wait around and it'll all turn up, and you'll be, hey man, maybe I could do the sell side as opposed to the buy side. Nah, you don't know anything about that. Get lost.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
That's exactly right.
Right.
That is exactly right. And that I knew from very early on that did not, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, some people get super nerdy about one particular thing. that's just not how I'm built. And I recognized that very early on. So even when I was at like Latham in a while, I was very clear with the partnership there that, look, I love you guys. I know you love me too, but let's be upfront about this. I'm not shooting for partnership. I'm shooting to be here and get trained and eventually go be a potential client of yours in-house. Right.
Right. And that is a normal cycle within a big law firm to want that to happen, because it feeds the referrals, it feeds the corporate stack of clients, it has a low marketing cost, there's already a hand in glove relationship with you. But I don't think you actually brought Latham to RiskIQ. I think you decided to do something else, right?
No, yeah, that's exactly right. So here's the crux of the story. So when I moved back here to the Bay Area, I stayed at Weil Gotshal when I got here, and Weil Gotshal here in Silicon Valley, they specialize in the buy side. They represent like Oracle, Facebook, and a bunch of big tech companies.
Right.
And so I was very upfront with Weil, and I said, look, I'll keep doing deals for you. This is great. I love this firm, but the part of the bargain is you help me transition back to life in San Francisco and help me find an in-house job.
Okay.
And so what happened was they were able to put me in front of a lot of large tech companies, but what I discovered was that's not actually what I wanted. I wanted to do something, to be at a company where I can contribute in a million different ways, a million different unexpected ways, right? And the in-house jobs at the large companies are very functional, right? You fill a particular function. And so what happened was I actually found RiskIQ on my own. So one of our co-founders, Dave Pond.
I know Dave. Sure.
Of course, yeah. I worked with his uncle over 20 years ago. My first job out of college, I was in software sales, and his uncle, Ed Pond, was the corporate controller, VP of finance. So when I made that connection, I asked Dave Pond's uncle to check if Dave was looking for a lawyer, and it just so happened they were. And so within a couple of weeks, I was at RiskIQ.
So that's a good story, because then there was no headhunter cost. There was no time, confusion, or other bullshit that you have to go through a million interviews. Sounds like it was a perfect, easy placement then.
That's exactly right. And the thing that worked out was our two of our Series A and our Series B investors, Summit and Battery, they were clients of Weil, and so I was able to connect the reference checks really quickly.
Right.
And it's been 5.5 years, and here I am.
So it's a great story, because it was a smooth transition. I know that when I helped Lou and CK and Dave start, and really there were other people too. I always say that Nancy was actually the co-founder, Nancy, Lou's wife,
connector of the world.
Right. Yeah. Right. So that's Jason Zan ringing in an agreement to that. In general, they were kind of like, look, we know we're going to outgrow you, but we don't want to outgrow you, but we have to outgrow you. So help us find the right lawyers. And I said, look, eventually you're going to need an in-house lawyer, because there's a lot of paper that comes through legal, and a lot of it really needs to be systematized. And I'm sure we're going to talk for a few minutes about that too. Some automation needs to apply. You need someone managing that function well. That person needs to tie in with the CFO. The CFO needs to tie in with all the other people, and it all comes together. And it took a while for them to actually buy into that. And then when they bought into that, which was after, I forget if it was Cooley initially or some other firm that was kind of in the background doing other corporate work, because the VCs were like, yeah, we're ready to use a big firm. Jack's nice, he could stay on the board, but we're ready. And I said, great, this is a good story. This is like, you're off in outer space. We expect that. And then the result was, we need to figure out this in-house thing. Help us. And I think I did come up with a few people, but it was always like, the fit was not right, and the attitude was not right, or something wasn't right, too young, too old. I mean, you can do the gamut of what's out there. But you fit right in. And I remember when you joined, I thought, man, this is perfect. And you've got longevity in a situation where there's got to be a lot of mediation skills ultimately that you've got to use, right? I'm sure. I mean, not a lot, but some.
That's right. Yeah, I've had longevity here. It's 5.5 years, not quite as long as Zan, but I think Zan was there from the beginning. But yeah, it's been 5.5 years, and I feel like we're just. I mean, I always feel like we're just hitting our stride, right? So, but you know, I gotta say, like, I've had a lot of great jobs in my life, but I've never had one that this is by far like not, there's everything else is a distant second and third. I've loved this job the most. You know, when I was a first year associate at SCAD, and this is 15 years ago, I remember the managing partner. You know, I asked the managing partner, like, you know, what's great about, what do you like about this, you know, what we do? And he said, okay, well, look, you know, there's a lot of noise, but when you boil down to it, you know, the thing I liked about being a lawyer is that people pay me to be smart. That's what they pay me for, right? And I get to use my brain, right? And people pay me for that. He said, that's fantastic. And that's how I feel about showing up at RiskIQ for work. It's Lou, Zan, and everyone else. They pay me to be smart, and they come to me when they want to talk about something and they want to have someone. I don't have all the answers, but but I'm a conduit for having an intelligent conversation about it, and
right.
I get paid to do that.
Right.
You know.
Right. As opposed to maybe on the M&A side, there's a lot of what I would call routine due diligence or routine paper pushing that can really bore the hell out of even, you know, the nerdiest of the nerdy people that do that kind of work. And you're not nerdy, and I can't even imagine you doing that work, but you probably did it really well. I know you did it well. And the interesting part of that whole story is, you know, you found out early, which is great, because there are people that become partners in that firm and then they get to midlife crisis at about 50, and you're not nearly there. I think you're still in your 30s. You correct me as to your age, but I think
43.
Yeah, you look great, man, whatever you're doing. Yeah, he looks great. He doesn't have that gray beard like you, Zan. What gray? What gray?
I had to work on this.
There's a Zoom filter. There's a Zoom filter I'm using.
Well, you know, if you put some of that just for men or whatever that treatment is, you'll actually look a lot younger. But that's a footnote to the story. But the short answer is, because I was almost like you, and I shaved this morning for this Zoom. I was looking like you, but my wife said, it's all white, man. You're going to scare those people. You look all white. So I shaved this morning, or else you would have said, man, who's gray? But the point is that you're staying young really in a high-paced, fast environment. RiskIQ does threat intelligence outside the firewall. It's a big, ginormous space. We've been talking about that in the series and all the challenges to it. And you're running legal, which is really a critical function in a company like RiskIQ. What would you put down as like your top 3 challenges? And then we'll drill down on how you have picked them up and run with them.
Yeah. So challenge number 1 was, you know, in law firm life, you generally don't learn how to mentor, manage, and build teams, right? Because there's a system that brings on new hires. It's like there's a machinery that works, right?
An infrastructure.
There's an infrastructure. Right. So you as a senior lawyer at a law firm aren't really spearheading team building, either recruiting team members or developing team members, right? Now, one thing I realized quickly, I'd say within the first year of coming in-house, it's like, once I start thinking, okay, well, you know, it's fine that I'm personally reviewing all contracts right now, but if we ever want to go from 9 million in revenue to 100 and 300 and a billion, well, obviously that doesn't work. That's going to break down very quickly, right? And I did not have the right skills. No, I didn't have and I realized I'd never built the team before, right? And so that was the first big challenge. And I've done quite well in that. I think part of that's luck, and part of that is actually being really self-aware. I think the first step in being a great manager is to be aware that you're not naturally a great manager, you know?
Right, right. And you
Yeah.
stretched yourself. So what I'm hearing is you took on the challenge and you grew the skill with the challenge, and you've now built, it's not a big legal department, but I think it's extremely efficient for the size that it is. I often think you're probably doing this with like half the number of people that you're doing, because A, I know you work long hours, and B, I think you've added a lot of automation to the story, and we'll get to that. And you guys know how to use automation, and it fits the theme of, you know, you guys are all really smart to begin with, and you know how to work really smart in a super smart way, which I can't say for a lot of other startups that I've helped mentor. But generally speaking, you're doing the work probably of, I'm going to guess, 5 lawyers if you had to delegate it out to outside lawyers. And you don't delegate that much out, as I see it, as a board member now, less as a lawyer and more as a board member. I think you're running a tight legal budget that probably gets tightened on you all the time. And I'm guessing you look at it and say, yeah, it's a new challenge, let's do it. And you do it with the number of people that you have, right?
That's exactly right. That's a good segue to the next challenge. The next challenge is, how do you, given that I'm general counsel, that means I'm responsible for everything, but my knowledge is, I don't know everything, yet I'm responsible for everything, right? So how do you bridge that gap? And that's a challenge, right? Because and that's a challenge for any general counsel, because no general counsels come in knowing everything. I came in with the M&A background. Some people come in with the IP. Some people come in with litigation. So how do you bridge that gap? And one possible way to do it, which I don't recommend, right, is try to know everything, right?
It's
Another
impossible.
possible way to do it.
Yeah, it's not
impossible.
Impossible.
Another possible way to do it, which I also don't recommend, is to increase your head count so that you have people that know everything.
Right.
Also not realistic for a startup, right?
Not sustainable for sure.
Yeah. And there's a third option, which I also don't recommend, which is whenever you get something you don't know, call outside counsel. You know,
very expensive.
That's very expensive. So where I landed on, which it's worked for me,
is you having a clear sense of a true north. And I'll be very specific what that means and how it shakes out, right? So the true north that I picked, and I'm biased because I come from an IPO and M&A background, right? So the true north I picked is that RiskIQ for me is one giant IPO or M&A deal, you know. Whereas in a law firm, that's a 3 to 6 month project. Well, for RiskIQ, that's a 3 to 10 year project for me, right?
Okay.
So once I picked that as my true north, like true north is an IPO, right? In that case, then most of my significant or material legal decisions will be based on, hey, will this be material enough to make it on an S1 filing? You know,
that's a good test, because you're saying the signal to noise ratio, there's a lot of noise, and I'm not going to fly spec an NDA that's not going to matter, you know, in an IPO. You're just not going to fly spec it. You're going to say, let's run that through. There's a bunch of automation tools that are out there. I don't think you use them. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you're not going to, let's not spend more than 10 minutes on that. Maybe we're going to change, maybe we don't, but it's just not worth it, right?
That's right. Right. And likewise, if a large security company is going to do an M&A transaction, will this be disclosable on a disclosure schedule on a merger agreement? If the answer is yes, I better get Cooley to give me an opinion, or I better do some digging. If the answer is no,
right,
let's wing it.
So that's a good, I mean, wing it probably isn't what you would say. You'd probably say something like, let's be conscious that 5 minutes is sufficient for what level of import this has, and let's put that down as, and learn from it, that we can set of precedents around certain things and then just move on, right?
That is what I meant by wing it. Yes.
That's what you mean by wing it. I know, I get that. So what's the third challenge? Because it sounds like the first two, the team building, as well as the fact that you've got an internal materiality test, which I think is a good one. And I think a lot of general counsel out there, they have no sense for true north. They don't know north from south or east from west. And they try to own everything and they stress themselves to death and they can't sleep at night. They typically turn to alcohol, get divorced, and it's just a terrible thing. And there are a lot of lawyers like that too, by the way. You know, you don't know this, Zan doesn't know this, but I'll tell him and he's going to learn something. There's a notion of like the other bar. 20% of lawyers spend a lot of time in the other bar. The other bar is the rehab for spending too much time in a bar. That is, 20% of the bar is alcoholic. 20%, think of that. 1 out of every 5 lawyers. And let me tell you something, I think that number is growing. I show up sometimes to depositions, and I've even shown up at trials where the opposing counsel is drunk. And I have to say to the judge, I don't think we can go forward today. And I don't know if Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, and it's both male and female, want to tell you why, but I could tell you why if they won't. And then they say, yeah, Your Honor, I'm not having my best day. And the judge gets pretty miffed about it. But then we go to trial the next day, typically with a different lawyer from that firm, because the judge makes a call to the firm and says, look, who you sent's got a problem. I'm going to report them to the bar if you don't report them. And then someone new comes in, and then usually at that point the case settles because, you know, they really can't do a switcheroo that fast. That's happening more and more often, particularly with legalized marijuana. There are a lot of lawyers that would say, I'm not an alcoholic, but yeah, you know, I get take a little edge off. And, you know, it's dangerous because, you know, you are flying a plane, particularly a trial, is like flying a 757 or 67 or 77 or maybe even 87, depending on the size of the case. And you can easily crash that plane and cause a company to go out of business. I mean, literally, some cases are, you know, make it or break it cases. So tell me what you think the third one is, because you've also kept the company out of litigation, which I have to give you a big, big star for. I've always thought sooner or later we would have at least a dozen lawsuits. I don't think we've had one. You tell me if I need to be stood corrected. I kept them out of litigation for the first 10 years. I think you've done a great job for the remaining 5.5.
Well, thanks to you on a couple of instances, but
a couple of close calls. I maybe came in as a sort of final relief pitcher, but other than that, see, that's the part that the board doesn't know. So I've been sending some of these voice recordings to our other board members. It's like, what the hell does Russo do there anyway? He doesn't even talk that much during board meetings. What the hell's going on? And they don't know there's a lot of background stuff that goes on in the actual operation of the company that gets things done. But at some point they may actually listen, and I'll get a call from them and say thank you, or not.
I don't want to take anything for granted, so I'm knocking on wood. But yes,
me too. We all are.
But look, I don't want to get complacent, because as we start, the bigger we grow, the bigger the target we become, right? So, again, knock on wood. But to answer the third challenge, I think I'm going to give a cliched answer, and I'll fill it in with some less cliched details, right? So the cliched answer is you got to find the look, if you're in a role in a company that you don't naturally fit with, that's going to create stress for you. Right.
That's called misalignment. Misalignment. Right.
Right. Exactly. Right. So if I was still in a law firm, if I was still, you know, let's say I made partner and I just couldn't resist taking it. I took it and I'm doing it. There's really good money. I would probably be driven to the bottle right now. Right. But what I found, and you know, to my credit, I was intentional that I wanted to find an in-house role at a company which allows me to be that is less like a function and more like the playground, right? And I was very intentional about that, and I found it, right? And it's been a great fit for me. So not everyone would fit in with this role. And here's some specifics, like, and Jason Zanke back me up. This is not a 9-to-5 job, right? And if you wanted a 9-to-5, right? And if you wanted a 9-to-5 job, this job would drive you to the bottle, right?
Yeah, it's more of a 5 to 9 job. 5 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Oh, I thought you were going to say 5/9's job. You have to be available 9.99.999% of the time. Yeah, 5/9, that kind of thing.
It's a better one, Jack. I like that.
Right.
But what would stress me out is if I actually, you know, I actually, for a long time, I thought I would want a 9-to-5 job where I didn't have to start thinking about it till 8:59. And at 5:01, I could stop thinking about it. I thought that would be the ideal scenario. But it turns out I'm not wired that way. And if I found a job and a role that I just didn't care about after 5, right? That would drive me nuts. The thing that lights me up is that I actually like thinking about this job, naturally think about this job after 5. But on the flip side, what also works for me and keeps me away from all this parade of horribles about getting overstressed is that the way RiskIQ works, it's an accountability culture, right? Not a FaceTime or butt in seat, culture. And so if I need to, from like 3 to 4 today, if I want to just go do nothing, walk my dog or ride my bike, that's available to me. So this job works well.
You have some autonomy. You have some real autonomy that you feel really positive about, that say in the big law firms or even in the big corporate departments you would never have. That's exactly what I'm hearing.
That's exactly
right. Right. Let's wrap up on automation and how you're using it and what you're seeing the future look like here.
So we are just starting to think about ways we can automate contract production and review, and also to store our contracts in a way that they are searchable in a meaningful way.
Right. Right.
And we're just getting there right now. So we don't have anything in place though right now.
Okay. So have you gotten to the point of using tools? I'll wrap up on this question. There's a bunch of little AI companies I'm helping. That's kind of the new wave. Some of them are legal AI. Some of the legal AI is interesting. The one I saw that was most interesting, and I'm helping, is called NDA Lynn, NDALYNN. It takes a non-disclosure agreement, which is not obviously the biggest thing you're ever going to see, or that really that important or that critical, usually not that critical. And it actually runs a series of tests that throws back at you a dozen comments like, this thing is off the wall crazy, don't sign it. It actually gives advice. And I've said to them, you can't give advice, man. You got to say, you really should talk to a lawyer. And they put some of that stuff in now, like you really should talk to a lawyer. You got to be, very careful, that sort of thing. So you might want to test it. It's called www.nda, N as in non-disclosure agreement, NDA Lynn, LYNN. I think the woman who started the thing, her name was Lynn. I don't know if she's still running it, but it's in the Netherlands, but it's applying U.S. law, and it's covered 2 states so far, New York and California, because they know this states. So you've got kind of arguably the 2 jurisdictions we're most dealing with, and EU law for EU-based agreements. So you can look at it like, well, this is good because I could press the button that says, let's test this against EU law and get some feedback for free. And so far, they're building a very nice database. And whether it can flesh out enough to really make a difference, because then they want to go maybe to license agreements and then jump from there to maybe more sophisticated stuff. So we'll end on that notion, which is, I think, between the 2 of us, me on the board, you as general counsel and senior VP and all that jazz, we could probably start testing more things, because I see this stuff very early in the gestation process, and you might be interested in being a bit of a guinea pig. I offer that to all the lawyers I see that I talk to.
I would love to be a guinea pig, and I think the next stage of that would be some standardized version of a SaaS contract, because they're starting to get a lot less interesting.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Good. So we're ready to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to RiskIQ Radio.